You ever watch karma hit so hard it leaves airbags deployed? My HOA's cop thought smashing my mailbox made him untouchable. 4 times he hit it, 4 times I rebuilt. But the fifth time, I built something he never saw coming. One morning his truck crumpled, his pride shattered, and the cops slapped on the cuffs. Federal offense, 3 years max. And the HOA president who backed him? She went down right after. Want to know how one mailbox toppled a neighborhood tyrant? Stick around because this story will show you exactly how I turned the HOA's fake sheriff into their biggest embarrassment. If you enjoy HOA revenge stories like this, hit that like button and subscribe because trust me, the next one is even crazier. You ever get that gut feeling when something small, something petty, is about to spin wildly out of control? That was me, standing in front of what used to be my mailbox. Again. Wood shattered across the ditch, metal bent like an old soda can, letters and bills scattered in the weeds like confetti from a cruel parade. Most people would have shrugged it off as a random accident, a careless delivery driver, maybe a teenager cutting corners too sharp. That's what I told myself the first time. But the second, third, and fourth? No, this wasn't chance. Someone was sending a message. I lived at the edge of a supposedly quiet subdivision, peaceful enough on paper, until the HOA decided to crown itself a king. Or rather, until they handed a plastic crown to a man named Milton Craig. Milton wasn't a cop, but he lived like a parody of one. Reflective vest, plastic badge, a two-way radio clipped to his belt, even though no one on the other end cared to answer. He walked the sidewalks like he owned the land beneath them, clutching his clipboard full of fake citations and rules he twisted to suit his mood. A sheriff without a town, a guard dog without a leash. At FE. Rest, Milton's nonsense was irritating but manageable. He knocked on my door to complain about the angle of my parked truck. He waved his clipboard when the grass grew half an inch taller than regulation. He made comments about maintaining uniformity, like this neighborhood was some utopian experiment instead of a scattering of ranch-style houses and retirees watching daytime TV. The mailbox, though, that crossed a line. The first time it was smashed, I swallowed my temper. Hauled the broken post out of the dirt, bought a new one, stuck it in the ground. Easy fix. But then 2 weeks later, there it was again. Crushed, splintered, mail strewn like an insult across my driveway. A pattern was forming, one I couldn't ignore. I started paying attention. Neighbors whispered when Milton passed, his clipboard swinging like a weapon. I caught the way they looked at me, some sympathetic, others afraid to be next on his radar. One woman leaned close as I was hammering in yet another post. "He doesn't like you," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder like Milton could appear at any moment. "You stand up to him. Most people don't." That tracked. I'd spoken out at HOA meetings before, questioned his bogus citations, reminded people of their actual rights under county law. Maybe that was enough to land me on his personal hit list. But even then, targeting a mailbox, that seemed beneath even Milton's brand of petty tyranny. Until I caught the first real clue. Milton's old pickup truck had a bumper bent inward at a strange angle, with flecks of white and green paint clinging stubbornly to the dented steel, the exact shades that matched my mailbox. Coincidence? Maybe. But my gut screamed otherwise. Milton didn't just hate me. He wanted to grind me down, piece by piece, until I bent like everyone else. That was the night I set up the wildlife camera. Just a simple, motion-triggered trail cam, the kind hunters use to track deer. I mounted it to a tree near the road, angled perfectly at the mailbox. If Milton wanted to keep playing demolition derby, I was going to catch him in the act. And oh, did I. The footage came back clearer than I could have hoped. At 6:14 a.m., while most of the subdivision was still asleep, Milton's dented pickup rolled slow down my street. He didn't even bother disguising it. No hesitation, no subtlety. He swerved just enough to clip the box, wood splintering like fireworks as letters flew into the ditch. Then he drove off like nothing happened, like this was just his morning routine. When I watched the clip, I almost laughed. Here was Milton, the self-proclaimed neighborhood cop, the enforcer of rules, committing a federal crime in broad daylight. Because that's what destroying a mailbox is, a federal offense under U.S. Code Title 18, Section 1705. Up to 3 years in prison if anyone cared enough to enforce it. So at the next HOA meeting, I stood up calmly and played my evidence for the room. Milton sat there in the folding chair, smug grin plastered across his face like he'd already won. But when the video froze on his vanity plate, clear as day, the smugness cracked for a second. Then he crossed his arms and leaned back like he was untouchable. That's when it hit me. The HOA wasn't going to stop him. Karen, the president, immediately jumped to his defense, insisting the video wasn't clear, that it could be anyone. The rest of the board averted their eyes, unwilling to challenge him. Milton had wrapped the HOA around his fingers so tightly they'd sooner blame me for flimsy construction than hold their cop accountable. Justice wasn't coming from them. If I wanted it, I was going to have to get smarter. So I did. That night I sat on the porch staring at the empty patch of dirt where my mailbox should have been. The trail cam footage burned in my mind, Milton's smug face replaying like a bad dream. It wasn't just the mailbox anymore. It was the principle. He wanted to show me that he could break something of mine anytime he wanted, and nothing, not the law, not the HOA charter, not the neighbors, could stop him. But Milton made a mistake. He thought I was like the rest. He thought I'd roll over, pay my fines, rebuild quietly, and pray he didn't target me again. He didn't realize I had the patience to play the long game. So I started sketching. It began with research, late nights scrolling forums where folks swapped stories about mailbox vandalism. Farmers, ranchers, ex-military guys, they all had tales of punks with bats or kids with fireworks. And every so often, a post would mention the same solution, a fortress box. Steel core, concrete base, hidden reinforcements. A box that looked ordinary from the road, but hit back when tested. By morning, I had a plan. First, I dug the post hole deeper than regulation, wider too. A simple wooden post wouldn't do. I bought an 8-foot steel pipe and filled the bottom 3 feet with quick-set concrete. Once hardened, that post wasn't going anywhere. Then I welded a steel plate onto the front of the box, just thin enough to disguise under a coat of matte green paint. The edges I smoothed and buried under layers of wood trim so it looked like a standard ranch-style mailbox. Normal, innocent, but waiting. Neighbors slowed their cars when they saw me working. Some gave curious waves, others whispered behind closed doors. I caught Milton's pickup crawling by once, his head swiveling like a hawk, clipboard on the passenger seat. He didn't stop. Not yet. But I saw the twitch in his jaw when he spotted the new post. He thought it was just another rebuild. That was exactly what I wanted him to think. For 2 weeks, by nothing happened. Mail came in clean, box stood tall. I started to wonder if the camera footage spooked him, if maybe he decided to back off. But then, just as I was starting to breathe again, it happened. The sound came first, a metallic crunch at dawn, sharp enough to rattle me awake. Then the grinding screech of tires, the unmistakable pop of a radiator hose under pressure. I ran to the window, pulled the blinds aside, and there it was, Milton's truck, nose crumpled like an accordion, hood steaming, front end wrapped around my mailbox. Except this time, the mailbox didn't break. It didn't even lean. I stepped onto the porch, heart pounding, adrenaline singing in my veins. Milton sat in the driver's seat, both hands on the wheel, dazed and red-faced. The airbag had punched him square in the chest, and for once he didn't look like a sheriff. He looked like what he really was, a fool caught in the act. Neighbors gathered quick, phones out, recording, whispering. The same people who'd stayed silent at meetings now had proof in front of them. My mailbox stood untouched, like a soldier on duty, while Milton's truck sagged in defeat. "Guess you missed your turn," I said loudly enough for the crowd. He muttered something, tried to back away, but the front axle was shot. His truck wasn't going anywhere. A few folks laughed under their breath, others shook their heads. It was the kind of humiliation you couldn't spin away, no matter how many clipboards you carried. But I wasn't done, because while Milton sat there wheezing in his crumpled truck, I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed. Not the HOA, not the county sheriff, straight to the local postmaster's office. "Yeah," I said when they picked up. "I need to report vandalism of federal property. Again. And this time, I've got the suspect pinned to the scene." You could hear the shift in the air when I said the word federal. Neighbors worked up, eyes widening. Milton's smug mask cracked completely, replaced by a flush of panic. He knew exactly what it meant. Destroying a mailbox wasn't a slap on the wrist. It was a federal offense. Fines. Jail time. Maybe even the end of whatever petty authority he'd clung to. As the tow truck hauled his ruined pickup away and the sheriff's cruiser pulled in behind it, I leaned on the unbroken post of my mailbox and realized something important. This was bigger than me versus Milton. This was about the HOA itself, The fake cop was just the fist. Someone else was the hand behind him, and I had just proven that even fists could break. The sheriff's cruiser rolled up slow, lights off, but the presence alone was enough to turn the crowd of gawking neighbors into a courtroom. Milton slouched against the side of his crumpled truck, face pale, sweat dripping down his temples. For once, his clipboard wasn't in his hands. It was lying in the dirt, useless. The deputy stepped out, a man I recognized as having lived 2 towns over. He wasn't smiling. He walked the scene, looked at the busted grill, looked at my untouched mailbox, then pulled a pen and small notebook from his pocket. "Name?" he asked. Milton puffed up his chest, tried to muster authority. "I'm with the HOA, Officer Craig." The deputy didn't even look up from his notes. "You're not law enforcement. You're the suspect." That single line broke something in Milton. His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but no words came out. He just sagged further, defeated, as the deputy turned to me. "You the homeowner?" "Yeah," I said, nodding at the mailbox. "This isn't the first time. Got trail cam footage of him doing it before. Tonight, I guess he figured he'd finish the job." The deputy wrote fast, eyes darting to the crowd of neighbors holding up their phones. "You'll want to bring that footage to the station. Destroying a mailbox is federal. He'll be answering to more than me." The murmur through the crowd swelled. Federal. The word hung heavy, like a storm cloud breaking. People exchanged glances, some relieved, others shocked. For months, they'd lived under Milton's clipboard reign, too afraid to challenge him. Now they saw what he really was. Not a cop, not an authority, just a reckless man with a truck and a plastic badge. Karen, the HOA president, finally shoved her way forward. Her face was red, not from shame but fury. She glared at me, then at the deputy. "This is a misunderstanding," she snapped. "Milton was protecting the neighborhood, keeping order. He would never—" The deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, he's on video running down federal property. He just plowed his truck into this man's mailbox in front of 30 witnesses. You want to file a statement, you can do it at the station. Otherwise, step back." That was the moment the HOA's armor cracked. Karen's voice faltered. She glanced at the neighbors, people she used to boss around with Milton at her side, and realized no one was nodding this time. No one was backing her play. The crowd's silence was louder than any accusation. Milton was cuffed, stuffed into the cruiser, and driven off. His truck followed on a flatbed, leaking oil like a trail of defeat down the street. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood felt different, lighter. People lingered on the sidewalks, talking openly, trading phone numbers, like prisoners realizing the cell door had been left open. Karen tried to keep her grip. At the next HOA meeting, she pounded her gavel, scolded, tried to rewrite history. "This community needs structure," she said. "Milton's absence is temporary. We will not tolerate rebellion." But the words bounced off. Neighbors who'd once shrunk under Milton's glare now raised their voices. They demanded votes, demanded accountability, demanded she explain how a man like Milton was ever given power in the first place. Her gavel struck harder, faster, but the sound was hollow. Within a month, Karen was gone too. A forced resignation, papered over with polite excuses. The HOA still existed on paper, sure, but its fangs had been pulled. No more fake cops, no more clipboard tyranny. And me? I kept my mailbox standing tall, paint fresh, posts solid in the ground. It wasn't just a mailbox anymore. It was a monument, a reminder that sometimes the smallest battles, a broken box, a dented truck, are the ones that shift everything. Neighbors still stop by sometimes, pointing at it, laughing about the day Milton's empire came crashing down. They ask if I ever worried about going too far, about baiting him into that crash. I just shake my head. He thought he was above everyone. He thought breaking people down made him strong. But the truth is simple. I pat the steel core hidden under the wood, the same post that stood unbroken through it all. You can't bully what won't bend. And with that, the so-called cop of the HOA was history. Nothing left of his reign but a dented truck, and the story neighbors pass around like a campfire tale. The day the mailbox won,